The rain hadn't stopped all day. It felt like it had something to say, whispering secrets through the gray evening air. In the back seat of a black Mercedes, Daniel Hayes stared through the raindrops on his window, watching his reflection blur and twist with every droplet. 5 years had passed since he'd last seen her, the woman he once promised forever to, and the woman he walked away from. Now, as the city lights flickered against the wet pavement, Daniel's heart pounded harder than it had in years. His world had everything: luxury, success, power. Yet tonight, it all felt small, because nothing could drown out the truth that haunted him. Most money couldn't buy back what he'd lost. If only he could undo that one mistake. Before we dive deeper into this emotional journey, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Soul Spark for more heartfelt stories that touch the soul. Daniel's car stopped in front of a modest brick house at the edge of town, the kind of place he'd once sworn he'd never live in again. But seeing it now, after 5 years of glass towers and cold penthouses, it looked warm. He stepped out, holding an umbrella, though the rain still managed to find his face. The gate creaked as he pushed it open, and his shoes sank slightly into the muddy grass. Every step toward that familiar wooden door made his pulse race faster. He hadn't rehearsed what he'd say. How do you start a conversation with someone whose heart you broke? Someone who once looked at you like you were her whole world. He stood at the door, fingers trembling, and knocked. For a long moment, there was silence, the kind of silence that holds memories. Then the door opened slightly. She stood there, Emily. The sight of her hit him like a wave he'd been bracing for but couldn't escape. She looked almost the same. Her hair a little shorter, her eyes quieter, but it was her expression that broke him, not anger, not joy, just stillness. Daniel. Her voice was calm, steady, like she'd practiced it 1,000 times in her head. He swallowed. Hey, Em, can I come in? A moment's hesitation, then a nod. The house smelled like vanilla and something faintly floral. The walls were painted soft beige, and framed photos lined the hallway. Pictures of her, of a life she'd built without him. Daniel's chest tightened when his eyes fell on a particular photo, Emily standing beside a young boy, maybe 6 or 7. His hair was the same chestnut brown as Daniel's, his breath caught. As that, Emily nodded slowly. His name's Ethan. The words hit harder than he expected. Ethan, he whispered, the name trembling on his lips. He looked at the boy's photo again, his smile pure, his eyes bright. Daniel felt his knees weaken. Why didn't you tell me? She crossed her arms, her voice calm but sharp. You didn't ask to know. You made it clear that your world didn't have space for anything ordinary. The Daniel's throat tightened. The past flashed before him. The arguments, the long nights, the way he'd chosen ambition over affection. I thought I was doing it for us, he said quietly. No, she said, meeting his eyes. You were doing it for you. 5 years ago, Daniel Hayes was the youngest CEO in the city. The world praised his brilliance, investors begged for meetings, and headlines crowned him the man who couldn't fail. But behind the closed doors of their glass mansion, failure had already arrived. Emily watched her husband slip away. Late nights, missed anniversaries, and that quiet ache that comes when love turns into background noise. She had begged him once, standing by their kitchen counter. You're losing us, Daniel. He'd barely looked up from his phone. I'm doing this for us, Emily! You think I want to work 14 hours a day? So she'd said softly, no, I think you want to win. And in that silence, both of them knew she was right. A month later, after one particularly cruel argument, she packed her bags and left, pregnant, though she never told him. He'd watched her drive away through the rain, convinced she'd come back. She never did. Now, years later, Daniel sat at her kitchen table, the same one he'd once bought for her. Ethan's toys lay scattered across the floor. Can I see him? Daniel asked. Emily hesitated. He's at school. Does he know about me? Her silence said everything. Daniel's eyes fell to the table. You hate me? She sighed. No, Daniel. I stopped hating you a long time ago. Hate takes too much energy. I just stopped expecting anything. He nodded, pain rising in his chest. That's worse. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn-out sketch, a child's drawing, crumpled but carefully preserved. Emily frowned. What's that? He slid it across the table. Ethan gave it to me. Yesterday. Her eyes widened. What, how? I saw him at the park, Daniel said softly. He dropped this. I picked it up to return it. And then I heard him tell his friend that his dad was a hero who just lives far away. Emily's lips parted, eyes glistening. You spoke to him, only for a moment. He doesn't know who I am. But he hugged me. Daniel's voice cracked, and I knew I couldn't stay away anymore. He reached into his bag again and took out a small wrapped box. Inside was a locket, gold, simple, with 2 tiny pictures. On one side a photo of Ethan. On the other one of Emily, from their wedding day. I don't want to rewrite the past, Daniel said. I just want to be part of his future, even if it means starting at the bottom. Even if it means you never forgive me. Emily stared at the locket, her hands trembling as she touched it. For the first time in years her voice broke. You kept our photo. I never stopped keeping it, he said. Tears welled in her eyes, years of silence melting into the sound of soft rain against the window. And in that moment, without a word, she reached across the table and took his hand. The days that followed were slow, uncertain but tender. Daniel didn't force his way in, he simply showed up. He helped fix the broken fence, dropped by with groceries, and waited outside Ethan's school until Emily finally allowed him to meet his son properly. The first time Ethan called him Dad, Daniel broke down in the car afterward. Emily watched from the window, tears in her eyes, not out of sadness, but because she saw a man she no longer recognized, and maybe, just maybe, a man who'd finally learned what love truly meant. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Soul Spark for more real, emotional stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Months later, the 3 of them sat at the park, Ethan between them, laughing as he chased bubbles in the golden evening light. Daniel turned to Emily. Do you ever think we could start over? She smiled faintly. Maybe not where we left off, but somewhere new. He nodded, watching Ethan's laughter fill the air. I'll take that. As the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold and forgiveness, Daniel realized something. The greatest riches he'd ever owned weren't the ones locked in bank vaults or luxury towers. They were right here, in this simple, imperfect, beautiful moment. And for the first time in years he was home. No matter how far success takes you, never let it distance you from the people who give your life meaning. Love doesn't need perfection, just presence, patience, and the courage to show up again.